Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of We Got Balls. And Scott, I don't know about you, but there's times in my life when I'm just going through my day and everything's great. Everything's good. And then bam, something happens. Like it just immediately I get off kilter and I get stuck. And we call that
being triggered.
We'll be right back.
Welcome to We Got Balls, real, raw, masculine sex talk with Chris Inman and Scott Cohn. Here we go.
Well, hey guys, welcome back to We Got Balls. Scott here, Chris, my partner in fantasy decoding.
Partner in crime, Scott.
Fantasy decoding. That's our job. And we're talking today about triggers, and that gets me thinking about, Chris, one of the things that really triggers me is when I'm hangry. Do you ever get hangry?
Yes. I get hangry would be an interesting thing, because when I get hangry, it's more like I'm mad at myself than like mad at somebody else. So like I've had kind of a shit day, and it's just things didn't go the way that I thought. And it's like 5 o'clock in the evening. And especially, this is my other trigger, is being alone. I'm alone, I'm hangry, and I've got opportunity, and I'm just like, what do I want to do right now? And obviously what would be really wise to do would be to get something to eat. You think? That might be
good self-care. Yes.
Hangriness is hungry plus angry. But instead, I go dissociate. I move into a place of, I want to check out. I want to, whether it's YouTube or Reels or scrolling or TV, or God forbid, going down the rabbit hole to the old well of porn. That's the battle I have to fight. Is I want to get to a place where I can care for myself well, but it's inevitably something in my life. And trigger wise, we want to just define that as anything in your life that you feel like you have to dissociate with, you have to cope with, that you have to move into to use your term, Scott, a survival strategy with. That is what sets you down the road to doing the things that you don't want to do. So for you, it's being hangry. What do you do with that?
So I do get really irritable, and my contempt is outward directed, not usually myself.
Yeah.
So I'm lashing out. I'm really grumpy. I'm really bad to be around. And so what I try to do is I try to avoid getting hungry in the first place. So I'm trying to eat, maybe 6 meals a day, smaller portions, so that my blood sugar is remaining constant over time, and I'm not having these big peaks and valleys. I don't eat a lot of carbs. I don't eat a lot of sugary, junk. So I try to keep a clean eating style day in and day out, because I found that when I fluctuate highly in that eating pattern and kind of what I'm eating as well, I tend to not be able to control my anger as well. So, how did I arrive at that? Well, it took some just kind of, first of all, emotional regulation, being in tune with my body.
Let's come back to that. So let's talk about triggers in two contexts. Let's talk about the triggers that we can control and the triggers that we can't control. Now, again, I don't believe control is real anyways. So control is an illusion. But like you're talking about, if I don't take care of myself, I'm going to get hangry. If I go all day, work too hard, get to that point in my day that I'm just really frustrated, I haven't eaten right, that's something that is preventable, maybe is the word to say. What are preventable triggers and non-preventable triggers? Because I think it'd be important. Let's come back and do the preventable triggers last, because I think that's something that has to do with self-care and understanding my own needs. What about the things that just come out of nowhere? Like I'll give you an example. The other day I was riding down the road, and my truck needle for the engine light just automatically went on, and the temperature went automatically to the red, and it was like 95 degrees here. And I start seeing smoke coming out of the front of my nice Toyota Tundra. And I'm like, oh shit, we have reached a breaking point. And I pull over, and I could hear right then, I could hear the gurgling in the radiator of not having enough fluid in it. It is my fault. Again, it's probably a preventable thing, but I didn't check it. And so now, has my truck blown up? Can I drive this thing? What's going on? And immediately, I wanted to go to a place of checking out. I wanted to get on my phone. I wanted to start scrolling. I wanted to just not be there. And that's one of 100 things. It could be, it's happened before with something that my wife has said. It's happened before that being around my parents at holidays. It's happened where I walk into a space and something gets done or said, and I just feel embarrassed. I feel like I don't belong. And those are just things that I can't control. They just happen in everyday life. And they're just triggers that I don't, how do I deal with that in the moment?
Yeah. Well, like everybody gets triggered. Everybody gets triggered. Everybody has another way of calling a trigger something. Maybe the word trigger sounds a little too stigmatizing. Maybe it's better to use the word activation, but everybody gets activated. If you look at our emotions kind of existing on this scale, and we talk about this a lot, between a very, very low level of activation over at a 1 and a high of 10. 1 would be completely numb, checked out, zoned out, foggy, shut down, listless. I just kind of, I'm almost on the edge of fainting. 10 would be terror, panic, rage, right? And so in between that, we have this sweet spot called the window of tolerance, where we feel at our best, we feel connected with others, we feel safe in relationship. There's the emotion of happiness, maybe on the softer side of that, or lower activation, we feel gentle, tender, kind, very connected. And so everybody goes out of their window of tolerance at times into a red zone of hyperarousal or a gray zone of hypoarousal, underarousal, that shutdown state. Everybody does this. But those of us that have a lot of complex trauma in our lives, a lot of developmental struggles, a lot of attachment wounds in our family system with our mom and dad growing up, a lot of sense of shame, we don't regulate our emotions very well. So we'll get into the red zone and we'll stay there, or we'll go directly into the gray zone and just feel shut down for hours and hours. And that's where the survival strategies, those things that we do to find temporary relief and temporary freedom, that's where they come from. In internal family systems, they call that the firefighter. The firefighter comes to put out the pain of the little boy. So usually when we're being activated or we're feeling triggered, there's something about the wounded little boy in us that's been poked, and he's hurting. And he doesn't know how to cope with this pain. And so this part of ourselves that serves the purpose of putting out our pain comes to the rescue with, hey, how about some porn and masturbation? Let's put that pain out with eating a big bag of donuts. How about we go get some fries and a Coke? How about we just zone out on social media? All those survival strategies that temporarily use pleasure to help us escape the hurt.
So you're saying that being triggered is a universal human experience. I've been triggered my whole life. And yet, when I was young, I depended on my caregivers to help me process through those triggers, right? Both in a proactive and a reactive kind of way. So if I don't eat breakfast and lunch and I get hangry at 5 years old, and my mom looks at me and she goes, well, you're hangry, Chris, because you didn't eat your breakfast and your lunch. And this is how we can care for that. You need to get you some food and sit down and take some deep breaths, that kind of stuff, right? If that's given, then that window of tolerance, that blue zone is wider as I develop. But if I don't get that, I have a really narrow window of tolerance, a really small spectrum where I can get triggered to go up, to act, fight, flight, or to shut down, depending on all my dynamics. So then when I get to be a young adult and something comes along that becomes a super soother, whatever that is, whether it's food, whether it's sex, or whether it's video games, or whether it's sports or religion or whatever that is, that becomes my go-to surrogate attuned experience. It's not really attuned, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's your
Yeah.
artificial attunement or
Yeah,
your automatic attunement.
Yeah. And so I go there and now I've found the firefighter. I found the rescuer that can come and be with me and soothe me. And it feels really good. This works for me.
Yes. Yes.
And at that age, I think the reality is we needed that. It helped me survive, right?
That's why we say every part of you is welcome, because that part of you that learned to come to the rescue of the hurt little boy was absolutely necessary. And you going to whatever your survival strategy was at the time was the absolutely understandable and common sense way of handling a problem that you were not getting any help handling.
Yeah.
In other words, if
I
you
was
don't
alone
get,
in it, I was stuck. Yeah.
if you don't get help from a parent regulating your emotions, you're going to find a way to do that automatically. And we got to bless that. And so you don't stop going to those behaviors by vilifying them and saying, you should stop doing that. You should stop doing that, because it helped you get through a long time when you weren't getting what you need. So that is a completely normal response.
So let's pull over. Let's pull over here and put a big exclamation mark. Can you say what you said again? These experiences, because I hear guys all the time. In fact, most of the conversations that I have with guys around unwanted behaviors, if you want to call them that, so things that you do when you're triggered, is I want to stop X. This is my unwanted behavior. I want to stop it. And yet what you're saying is something vastly different. It's not the behavior that's the problem. It's the strategy that got you to the behavior that's not been cared for. And how do you build a new strategy to deal with those triggers that isn't going to be as chaotic or shameful?
That's right. And here's another way of saying it is, if there's any part of you, if you hate that firefighter part that starts coming to the rescue of the wounded little boy when he has been activated, if you hate that part will become hostile to you. And you're going to have a hard time ever stopping that behavior because you're hating on that part of you. It's a part of you. And I think one of the reasons why internal family systems has been so powerful for a lot of people, it's very empirically validated from the research of what it actually does in our brains, but it provides this metaphor for thinking about how the mind actually works in these different parts. And we all talk about this naturally. Chris, you want to go to a movie tonight? Well, part of me does and part of me doesn't, right? You even see this in the Bible. The Apostle Paul goes, well, part of me wants to do what's right, and the other part of me likes to do the thing that I know I shouldn't be doing. Like, that's parts work. That's talking about these internal parts. But when you hate the part for doing what it was doing, when you weren't getting your developmental needs met, you're setting yourself up to have a civil war with yourself for a long time. So the way you stop is by, first of all, not just being aware of your triggers is the first step, I think. Just being curious about them, not being accusing of them. So in other words, if I say, I get triggered or if I ask you a question, what triggers you? Well, I get triggered when I'm hangry or, blah, blah, blah. That's really kind of a condemning approach to examining yourself and being kind to that part of you that gets triggered, which is the little boy, the wounded little boy. So let's be kind to him and say, where are the areas of his life where he felt a lot of pain growing up? And that's showing up in me in the present when I'm hangry. Maybe I grew up in a situation where I had a lot of food insecurity. Or maybe my mom and dad used food to try to discipline me. Like, if you don't, and my mom is great at this, if you don't eat all of those casserole things that I gave you, you can't have your dessert.
Or even worse, if you don't eat it, that's your breakfast.
Or you're going to, how about you're going to sit here until you eat it, you little shit. So
yeah. So again, all these environmental things I think are important to note, because when we're really trying to connect all the pieces that we have together, the behaviors that we do to cope with our triggers have developed out of this word is getting overused, but I'll keep using it, out of our trauma, out of our harm, out of our childhood, out of our upbringing, right? the things that were said to us or not said to us, that were done or not done, that we needed and we didn't get, so that we could develop in a way where we were balanced, not too high, not too low, but in that Goldilocks zone, that sweet zone of feeling safe, cared for, accepted. I'm good and I'm bad. Great. Sometimes I'm good. I get the praise. Sometimes I'm bad. I get the discipline. But both have its part, right?
That's right. And that ability to hold all of that is what integration is. There are parts of me that want things that kind of can undo me, but their intention is good. And so what is the real intention of a firefighter in that situation is when he's presenting, let's say I had a lot of food insecurity I had that kind of rigidity dealt with me in my eating schedule and what I was eating and so on. Can you please understand how I sneak donuts now and eat a whole box of them when I'm wanting soothing, right? Because I had to become really sneaky about my eating habits because there was such rigidity in my home. So I don't stop the eating problem by going, damn it, I can't stand that I do this. I'm such a fuck up. You stop it by saying, well, can you ask that firefighter part? Can you first of all thank him for the job he's doing?
Well, for just a second, I want to point out the firefighter is there to create safety. And that donut in that moment is helping you feel safe.
That's right. So can you thank that part of you that's wanting you to feel safe for the job that it's doing?
Yes.
Hey, and you can even have a conversation with that part of yourself by saying, hey, thank you. I know you've been working really hard to keep the little boy safe.
Sure.
A long time. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to just honor you for doing a great job. What I'd like to ask you to do right now is, could you just step back a little bit and let me handle him with some new things that I think are going to be more helpful for him, and give him new ways of kind of dealing with his emotions than continuing to eat donuts, because he feels a lot of shame around that. And would you mind just stepping back? And it's amazing when you do that, you can almost feel in your body the release of the tension that part is holding. And so this is it's a particular healing modality. There's a number of different ways to do it, but you can do this with another person too, who knows your story. What it takes is a willingness to kind of engage with somebody in the way that a healthy parent would in the first place. And it's that what you talked about, hey, I see you're kind of angry right now, and I noticed you haven't been eating. Could we just sit down and have a little snack?
Yeah. Well, that looks like a great donut. You've had 3. What's the next one going to do for you, Scott? I'm just curious. In that, what do you really want to feel in your body with that 4th donut? And that's totally cool. I think one of the best things I ever did was I did a retreat one time. And we'd done a ton of story work, got really emotional. And I said, guys, we're about to leave, and there's going to be a vulnerability hangover. And you can masturbate if you want to. You can go to that, or you can call one of us. It's your choice. And so in that attunement, it was like they were like, what? I can do the thing that I shouldn't be doing? Because so much of what you're talking about, that embodied shame and the rigidity of culture, whether it's religion or family or whatever, has programmed men to be like, I have to get rid of the bad thing. The bad thing is the problem, rather than valuing themselves as the thing that needs to be cared for. And the bad thing is just circumstantial.
And I loved what you did in that process of inviting them to either choose between masturbation or connection, because at least they could choose masturbation intentionally at that point. If you're going to masturbate, intend to masturbate. Don't just do it automatically to regulate your body. Just recognize, oh, I need a release because I need to feel some peace in my body right now. So I'm going to masturbate instead of calling Chris. That's okay.
But see, even when you say that, Scott, I think about that and I go, is that what I really want? I can call a friend or I can masturbate. Let me sit with that for a second. Sure, the masturbation is going to give me a bigger high in the moment, but afterwards I'm going to feel like shit. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to shut down. My emotion doesn't go away. But I really enjoy talking to Scott. I get a lot out of that. Like, I feel better after talking to Scott. So what do I want to do?
Right, but it's you expressing your agency. It's you actually being the one that powerfully makes the decision to what you want to do versus me going, you can't masturbate, Chris. If you masturbate, you'll lose your sobriety. You're not supposed to be masturbating when you're, helping other guys, blah, 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 blah. And and here's the thing. If I told you in the beginning, no, call me Chris instead of masturbating because I will help you and you'll feel connected and then you won't want to masturbate. You're going to be like, bullshit. Like calling you is not going to equal an orgasm.
Let's break that down. Call me when you want to masturbate. Because then when you call me, you won't want to masturbate anymore. It didn't deal anything with the desires of what's going on. It was all about the behavior. If you call me, you're a good boy and you won't masturbate. Versus, listen, just call me. Call me whenever. I'm here. You can call me before. You can call me after. You can call me during. It's all good. It's all good. Just call me. I just want to be with you. And then I probably, masturbate a dozen times more and go, Scott told me to call him. Why have I not been calling Scott? Instead, there's this invitation, this kindness of, maybe I could just do that. And then I call you and I'm like, well, that was a different feeling. That was nothing like masturbation. Like it didn't do anything for me that masturbation does. Now, I didn't feel this rush of hormones when we were on the phone because I love you, dude, but you're not as good as orgasm. I mean, that's just the truth.
I am not going to be as good as orgasm.
But the connection that we have over time trumps an orgasm every time.
That's right, because
it has meaning.
when we connect, you're building new neural pathways that help you feel that soothing and that comfort that you're really looking for when you go masturbate. So it's going to end up replacing it, and it will become a more meaningful way of soothing than what you've been doing. And it doesn't carry the potential to make you feel more shame. That's where the real value of it comes in, is you get what you really needed, which is connection in that moment. And it doesn't come with the shame hangover.
So it gets me off the hamster wheel of the addiction cycle. So let's talk about the other piece. So when something comes and happens and I can't control it, and I get triggered, the most effective way to get out of that cycle is what we just said, which is connect, reaching out, which is why we've said over and over again, we'll continue to say over and over again, connection is the opposite of addiction. And yet there are pieces in my day-to-day life that I can prevent triggers that are going to happen by taking care of myself.
That's right. And so that's where this acronym that we've used a lot, it's used in a lot of other recovery circles, where there's common states of mind where we tend to get really triggered, you're activated emotionally. So that is HALT BS is the acronym, HALT/BS.
You said halt bullshit. Okay, let's halt bullshit. Let's go.
Halt the bullshit. So here's what it stands for: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed. Okay. And I would add helpless, hopeless, worthless onto that. So for some reason I can remember that. I don't have to have an acronym. But when you're feeling bad about yourself, so those are the kind of emotional states that tend to get us into a place where we're going to go return to our coping strategies. So what can you do to eliminate being hungry? You can eat on a schedule. I can
plan when I'm going to eat, right?
I mean, how often have you been working with guys and you ask them, when's the last time you ate? And they go, well, I didn't eat lunch or dinner.
A lot.
It's regular. It's regular.
A lot.
And it's a lack of caring for yourself, right? It's kind of, again, it's a learned thing. Like you are ignoring signals that your own body is giving you, because your body's giving you signals. My body's giving me signals right now that I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So if I ignore that and I go on, my body is going to kind of get pissed off at me and do something about it. And that's what it does.
And it's going to move me out of that window of tolerance, probably toward the upper scale, toward hyper arousal. I want to do something about it. I want to
absolutely act. Right. Absolutely.
Not intentionally, but just in survival mode.
Yeah.
So and hungry, angry. So we put those two things. The hangriness is the first two pieces of halt BS. So when we're talking about angry, and is there a way to prevent how we can get or stop ourselves from getting angry? Or does that fall into that kind of, surprised by this?
Well, there is something you can do preventative that will create less of a kind of impulsive reaction, and that is to do mindfulness meditation. So that is the one kind of proactive activity that is very, very helpful in avoiding kind of going into the red zone deeply. Now, a deer runs out in front of your car and you smash your car, you're going to get angry. But
I think I would argue, and from doing this work myself, is like I can look back 10 years ago to where the exact same thing happened 10 years ago, and I would get really pissed off. Something would break, or somebody would call, or some circumstance would happen. And 10 years ago, it would be like, just dog cussing it, and really in the red zone hard, just really hyper aroused, wanting to fight. I'm a fighter. I don't flee anything. I'm gonna fight the hell out of this. And so I get to that fight space, and now the same thing happens. And you know what I do? I take a breath.
Okay.
And I let that sit, and I go, well, that happened.
And that is a form of mindfulness, right there.
Exactly.
The other thing that you've probably done that you may not put into this bucket is one of the proactive things that you did is you engaged the stories where you felt a lot of anger in your developmental period.
Yep.
And that anger is coming from a sense of loss, betrayal, helplessness. And you probably engaged some of that so that it's
expressed it and was seen in it, attuned with others in it.
Yeah. So your nervous system changed in the terms of how it handles the valence of that emotion.
Gotcha.
And again, that's proactive. You have to work on that way in. Like, this is not going to create overnight change. This is neurobiological change. It takes time, but getting that attunement in moments where you felt really pissed off, or making the call when you're really angry to me. And the first thing I do is, I'm not lecturing you. I'm soothing you. Can I just be with you in this? That is really tough, Chris. I affirm your anger. I see it. And that helps bring change about too. So those are, I think, the most effective strategies for that.
So that's good.
Emotion.
So lonely, obviously we talked about that with connection. You can also self-connect. That's what journaling is being aware of what's going on. It's a mindfulness practice. But you can sit down and write what's going on in your head, and there will be a resonance between the words that are printed outside of you and your experience of the moment. So that can be a helpful tool if you're a writer and you want to go.
You can even hug yourself. You can touch yourself.
Oh,
so
soothing like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can actually put your hands on your biceps and hug yourself. And do it for about a minute, and it will release oxytocin, which will calm you down.
Yeah, that's good.
You can splash cold water on your face. That's another.
So that's what cold plunges are for, because I'm lonely.
It will pick you up.
It's not. It will pick you up. Tired. I'm gonna tell you what. Tired. That is for certain the thing that I see most common with guys.
Oh yeah.
That come into this space is first question I ask is, "What's your sleep schedule like?" Oh, I stay up till like 2 a.m. What time do you have to be up in the morning? 6:30. So you're saying you get 4.5 hours sleep a night? How many nights a week? Well, so during the weekday and on the weekends, I probably stay up till 3 and get up at 8. So you're saying you have irregular and short sleep. And so are you tired? And literally I get this look. I don't know. Like,
again,
okay,
not a lot of bodily awareness going on with most men. So how many times have you heard a guy calls you and goes, "Man, I'm so exhausted. I stayed up masturbating to porn literally all night." I've had it happen over and over again, because
then they give you the excuse, "Well, I can't call anybody. It's the middle of the night," right?
Well, but when you get in that binge cycle, you're just you're not going to
call anybody anyways. Let's be true.
But
being tired, I would say, and again, along with food, I think sleep and diet are the two things that are like the baseline for emotional health.
Totally agree.
If you're not getting those two things regularly and in balance, you're going to have problems.
And I would say exercise. So it seems right, because if I'm exercising, I'm getting some degree of physical fitness a day,
Yeah.
I'm going to sleep better.
Sure.
I'm not going to stay up as late, right? I'm going to eat better. And so sleep, diet, exercise, super, like fundamentally critical from a proactive standpoint. So
Gotcha. So what's the BS? Let's talk about the BS really quickly.
Bored.
Okay.
So boredom and then stress. So let's talk about boredom first. What do I do when I'm bored?
In the short term, I distract myself, right?
Yeah.
I move into a place of just mindless activity. Whatever.
There's a real linkage between boredom and loneliness.
Yep.
And
well, and add another word in there, purposelessness. And I think there's a ton of guys who, when they think about boredom, what they think about is I have nothing to do. Well, have you done the work to figure out what you want to do? And even if something as small as an exercise routine can be really helpful in getting rid of boredom.
When you think about it, and I've done this exercise with guys, there's 16 waking hours in a day if you sleep 8 hours, right?
Yep.
So of those 16 hours, you're going to be working 8. So now you're subtracting that, right? And now you don't have all that many hours to plan out between taking a dump, showering, shaving, eating, food, cleaning up. There's only about 4 plannable hours, 4, kind of budget hours in a day that you can spend. How about spending an hour reading a recovery book or reading a book on trauma or listening to a podcast like We Got Balls? That's a fantastic podcast, by the way.
I love that podcast. Check it out. YouTube and all your podcast platforms.
So if you do that, if you call a guy and connect with him and have a 15-minute conversation, if you are connecting with your spouse, if you're married and your kids, you don't have a lot of free time. And I think what guys end up doing is they're not intentional about how they do live their life. And so their circumstances determine their schedule for them.
There's one more thing in that, Scott. I think with boredom, we've got to continually, as human beings, try something new. Variety is the spice of life. And if you want to eat the same old bland chicken breast every single day, that's fine. Go for it. But it's boring. Put some spice. There's always a new if you haven't tried pickleball yet, I don't play pickleball, but I got a good friend who's a pickleball coach and he loves it. He's out there 2 or 3 times a week, killing about 6 to 8 hours a week on the pickleball court. And whatever that is, book clubs, climbing gyms, anything where you can get out and be with other people, physical or not, there's opportunity. And the excuse of boredom, Scott, frankly, is going back to what we said earlier. It's just not being intentional. It's not choosing to do something. And we're not shaming you. We're just observing. We've been there. We know the feeling. So stress. How do I get rid of stress in my life, Scott, when I'm talking about triggers?
So the first thing you have to do is develop bodily awareness to deal with the stress in your life.
So I got to do all the other things before that, right? I got to do all the food, exercise, sleep, connection, purpose. The stress kind of is like the caboose of this.
But it's baked into all of this. Like it's baked into how you live your life. How many guys are living their lives in a hyper aroused, stressed out position, and they can only stay in that so long, and then they collapse into the hypo aroused gray zone where they're just listless and without energy, and they feel dead inside, and then they go to the survival strategy, particularly porn and masturbation, to feel temporarily alive. Because that being under constant stress and then collapsing is part of the way the nervous system is trying to help you attain some kind of balance. But again, when you have a lot of childhood trauma, you don't have a nervous system that has a wide window of tolerance where it can maintain a set of kind of a resilience and a bouncy backness to the stresses of life. Everybody has stress in life, everybody. But when you have childhood trauma, you don't know how to manage stress because nobody helped you learn how to do that. And so you vacillate between these extreme positions of over arousal, under arousal, and then that requires at some point a break where I've got to go feel alive because I'm feeling dead. I'm just feeling I can't cope anymore. So the one thing you can do here that's proactive is learn to be in a relaxed, muscled body. Just notice where you're holding tension in your body and breathe. Breathing, again, is one of those things that it's an autonomic function of the body, but by actually being intentional about how you are breathing, I can actually de-stress what I'm feeling in my body and then scan my body and release the stress. Just focus on that area. Oh, I'm feeling tension here.
That's good. That's good. Well, there's plenty more there. And a lot of this is stuff that, I'd encourage you guys to experience more so than just learn ideas about, because it's actions, it's behaviors that are undoing the unwanted, shameful behaviors that you're trying to get rid of. So it's a process. Give yourself grace, surround yourself with people who can connect to you, see you, be curious and kind with you. That's the environment where these triggers can be dealt with in a healthy way. So, as we say every week, we will be back this next week. I would say this: if you're listening to this episode, you want to tune in this Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on YouTube for our live from our Blue Ridge Story Retreat.
That's July 25th,
July
2024.
25th, Thursday. So this episode will drop mid part of that week. So just a few days. Check us out. We want to be with some guys who have invested in being in an environment that will bring them change. And we want you to experience that with us and get the vibe of what that is. I'll have my smiley mountain face on. I get mountain drunk and get so excited about being in the mountains. So it'll be I'll be like a little hungover, glaze back, be like, hey guys, what's up?
Rocky Mountain High.
No Rockies, the Smoky Mountains, baby. Smokies. Yeah. That's where I'm at. So we'll be there coming up soon. So we look forward to connecting with you guys really, really soon. You can always email us, wegotballs00@gmail.com, and share with your friends. Subscribe, like the podcast, like the YouTube channel. So share with your friends. We want to continue to get the message out that this is a great way to be able to connect to what you really want in life.
So thanks for being with us here on We Got Balls.
And you do too. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris and with Scott at successfulmen.com.